Hey Adams, we are live, which is always the words you want to hear when you're not ready. So, um, what I'm trying to do real quick before we actually really get going is I want to see if I can click on. There we go. I'm trying to share the video to X so that like people are like actually seeing it's live. So Marty will probably see it and jump on, even though he's like trying to put his kids to bed and stuff like this. So anyway, what I want to talk about today, because I didn't give you any sort of like heads up on what's going on. I just said, "Hey Adams, I want to talk," and you're like, "I'm always down for whatever, even if I don't know." I want to talk about names. We've talked about names quite a bit, and so there's so much to talk about that we're gonna have to focus this, because this will be like a multi-part thing, and even then we're not going to be able to control everything. There's just too much. So what I really want to talk about today is names as symbols, because we've been talking about symbolism a lot, and I want to talk about names as symbols. And the reason it came up, I'll give an example in a second, but the reason it came up is because I was listening to a BYU professor talk about some stuff, and he mentioned casually that one name that I guess I should have realized was kind of, it wasn't a symbol, but like it was what it meant. He said, this name, look up this name. This name means this and this. And this name, you kind of have to get in context. And I was like, well, hold on. I didn't know that. And it was a little too casual for me. I don't know if that makes sense, Adams, but like he dropped some knowledge that was too casual that like kind of blew my brain. Because we talk about, me and you, when I say we talk about how in the Book of Mormon, many of the names, if not all, are probably not the names that were used by the people in their instances. They're names that mean something. And so I guess what I'm trying to get out now is, so we're going to dive into that, but what I'm trying to get out now is that he mentioned that a biblical name that I thought was common, like might have been the name, but also it was chosen for a reason. That name meant something as well. So I say we go with the basics, which is the Book of Mormon. We're very common with the Book of Mormon names. We talk about it all the time. So I say we start there, then we dive into it. But before we do that, I'm going to give you like the little hint that you're going to be like, oh, well, duh, David. But it was what is it called when like you have something that blows your mind, even if it's like not impressive to others, like a paradigm shift. Like it shifted my paradigm because it opened up my understanding that maybe I should look at biblical names with more of a symbolic understanding than I am. So the name was Stephen and Nicodemus. So what he was saying that Greek names in particular, there's like three or four different types of Greek names, and actually I can pull it up and talk about it because I looked it all up afterwards. But the first type are the ones that are pretty obvious, I would say, meaning they're composite names. So like Theodosius Theo means God. I just made that one up, so I should probably actually pay attention to different names. So I'm looking for, here we go. Alexandros means Alex is defend, Alexo, and Andros means man, so it's like the defender of men. Philotheos, philo means loving, and theos is God. Nicodemus is the one that I didn't think about. I think you'd pronounce it differently because it's Nicodemos, and Nike means victory, so it's the word Nike with demos, or the people. So it's the victory of the people. And it just kind of got me all worked up because like I don't speak Greek enough to like have that pop into my head. The second type are simple but non-compound names. So they have like a clear lexical meaning, but you can't really understand what they mean unless it's in context. And that was where Stephen came into play. So some examples of that are are Sophia, which means wisdom. So you know that like it has something to do with wisdom, but you can't, like, you have to understand what it means in this scenario. Another example is Irene, which, or no, let's do Chloe, which the meaning literally means like green shoot or young plant, but that's not what someone would be referencing when they use the word Chloe. If they're trying to make it a symbol for something, it would imply freshness or fertility or springtime or something like that. That would be what, and then the one that we all know is Zoe, because Zoe means life. And so we'd have to understand that more in context. So I've already gone way off the deep end. There's a few other types of names in Greek, and like some of those are like Achilles, Odysseus, Heracles. They actually think they're probably pre-Greek, pre-Indo-European. They don't really understand what the roots are on those, at least from what I can tell, even though they're very Greek. But anyway, the whole point was, like, I was like, well, if we don't, like, we know that Stephen means something. I actually forgot what Stephen means. Let's see if I wrote it down somewhere. It means crown, or victory wreath. And so, like, in context, like, what are you actually trying to say? Like, what is the actual, you have to understand the context to understand what the name means. But, like, I forgot about, like, Nicodemus, and I was like, there's so many Greek names that are very clear, like Timotheos, Timothy. It means honoring God. It's exactly like Jacob or heel grabber. Like, those names mean things, and we need to pick them up. So, okay, now that I've talked too much about nothing, let's talk about Book of Mormon names, and if there's any that jump to your head, I'd like to talk about those. Yeah,
I have one of my favorite, mostly because I feel like this was hidden in such plain sight. I've never heard anyone else talk about it. In Alma chapter 11, this is that weird chapter in the Book of Mormon where they just start talking about like the names of money.
yeah, the different,
And
and to be clear, it's not currency. It's not money as we have it. It's not like dollar.
yeah,
It's measurements of
they're
weight.
measurements. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I always thought this was just the weirdest thing. I was like, why
I'm
would
gonna pull it
anyone?
up. Yeah.
Yeah, pulled up. I was like, why would anyone ever spend the time to like they're doing this on gold plates? It's seemingly unimportant, and it turns out I don't know all the reasons. There's probably a lot more reasons why they included this, but one of the obvious ones to me now is that they were setting up a really funny joke. Uh, a joke and a setup regarding the value of people. Uh,
The screen share
so
didn't work because I probably need to do the window capture or something, and that might be too much for me right now. I'm gonna try again, but keep going.
okay, so in verse 6 of chapter 11, uh, he kind of just discreetly mentions something. He says a senum of silver, an omnor of silver, an ezram of silver, and an ontai of silver. Now, ezram is kind of a funny word because it actually means something in Hebrew. Now, I'm not a Hebrew expert. I'm not even a Hebrew beginner. I'm not even a Hebrew anything. So there's a good chance I'm going to get this wrong. But according to the interwebs, Ezram means helper. And what's interesting is just a few verses later in this same chapter, they start talking about lawyers randomly because that's going to be important for the story to come, where the lawyers, all they want to do is get money. So they just described a bunch of monetary weighting systems, and then they're saying, hey, there's a group of people that all they want to do is get money. And one of those people's names is Ze Ezram. Now, maybe someone who actually speaks Hebrew can explain Hebrew grammar to me, because I'm going to butcher this, but this is just kind of what it means to me. Zet Ezram is clearly a play to me off of the word Ezram, which Ezram is like a sum of change. And Zet apparently in Hebrew means this. So Zezram, I guess you could, I don't know, I'm probably incorrectly doing it, but you could probably interpret it as like this helper. And it's hilarious because the lawyer who comes to dispute Alma and Amulek, who the author just explained all they want to do is to make money. He just set up a joke about the author's name meaning a weight of silver. Now, what's interesting about this particular character is that he changes his mind later, and he does become a helper of Alma and Amulek. He recognizes that what he did is wrong. So it's clearly someone of a farming education.
They say
understood
that
what was going on.
Z probably means like one who or this.
Yeah,
so it's the like, one who like is all about the Ezram, and
so there's a dual meaning to it. There's one where it's like it's he's all about the money, and then you have like the Hebrew meaning where he's all about helping, and it's so funny. And you don't even need to know the Hebrew to recognize that they set up a joke here within verses of each other, and I've never ever ever heard anyone recognize that.
Your point is that we don't know the Hebrew off the top of our head. We're not good enough. It's written in English, so that makes it a little harder. We don't speak Hebrew. It's written in English. Yeah. But the same words are literally inches from each other, except one has a ZE in front of it. And so, we just kind of like missed it. Like at least see the connection, right?
So there's actually another name in here that's thrown in here. There's probably a bunch, but the one that I recognize, there's actually a couple of them. I need to go through a couple more. I think I'm seeing another one right now, but the one that I know of is in verse 16. And a shiblon is a half of a shiblon, and a shiblon is a measure of barley in verse 15.
Yeah.
The shiblon is half of a senum. So they keep on saying that like it's half of this, half of that, half of this. Shiblon is a funny word because that's actually the name of one of Alma's sons.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when Alma is talking to his three sons, which is Helaman, what is it, Coriantum, and which that's another funny one. Coriantum being the name of the last Jaredite king or whatever, the one survivor of the Jaredites that the Nephites encounter. That's a little wild, but
so
he names his son the story has his son Shiblon, and he pretty much says to him, "Hey, you're a great guy, but you can do better." And in this weightings, it's like a Shiblon is half of this, half of that. And I think part of the joke is that like Shiblon's halfway there. He's doing great, but he can do better.
Sure. So real quick, so like the on suffix in Semitic names, either like it's often diminutive, so it's often like little buddy already, and shibble or sibyl can mean like ear of grain or sheaf of grain, something with grain. And then it eventually came to mean some other things. But the fact that it means anything about grain, which one was Shiblon in the letters to Alma's sons? Do you remember?
Yeah, so Shiblon, he was the one that, the reason why I know so well about this, because his advice to Shiblon was actually the most impactful to me when I was in like the MTC. This is the one where he says like, hey, contain your passions so that your heart can be filled with love. I think it's Alma. What is it? Alma?
I'm in 38 right now. Yeah,
38 sounds right. Yeah, or around there. Scriptures.
I have it pulled up, by the way, so you don't need to hide yourself. You can look it up, but I have it pulled up.
Oh, okay. Yeah, he was an excellent person. It's just, but there were definite words of like, "Hey, you're excellent, but you can be much better," and that was what I
Hmm.
got from it.
And at least that was the message that you took away. And
Yeah,
and
exactly.
if we understood the culture of the people of the Book of Mormon better, we would probably take away more as well. We'd be like, I guess what I'm saying is like, if if we understood the culture better, we'd probably be like, oh, if someone's named like a half, a tiny little grain or tiny little sheaf, half of something, but a tiny little sheaf, then maybe we would take the advice that Helaman gives him or the Alma gives him, and be like, this is clearly like a guy that's doing good, but he's not all the way there. He has not succeeded. I guess what I'm saying is like,
He does treat it as like a growing up situation. He's giving
mhm.
them like life advice almost.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of better examples. I know we've mentioned it before, but if someone's name was Little Buddy, for
Well,
example, like let's
we
just,
do have that though in Spanish and other
yeah.
languages. You call them Ito or something. Like
Well, I'm not
little
just talking about the
little
diminutive.
Carlos.
I'm not just talking about the diminutive. Like, what if the name was Little Buddy? Okay, like literally, like we're
Yeah,
telling a story about Little Buddy, and we're like, and Little Buddy tried so hard, and he got up to the top of the mountain. Great job, Little
yeah, the little
Buddy.
train that could.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we wouldn't like be sitting there thinking like maybe someone could say, "Oh, my hero's Little Buddy," but we wouldn't be sitting there thinking, "Oh, Little Buddy did everything right." We'd be like, if Little Buddy tried a little harder, or if he was a little bit bigger, or whatever it was, like we take a slightly different message, a more nuanced message out of it, and that's my
yeah.
whole
The
point.
name
Yeah.
the name goes to the story. It teaches us about the individual in the story, and that's, I think, the great one of the great lessons, hidden lessons in the Book of Mormon, is that these names do have meaning and they do add to the story, and it makes the stories like, this is one of the reasons why I think these were played out at some point,
Could
is
you describe
because,
that a little bit more? Because we mentioned it the
yeah.
other time in the post show. We talked
So
about it to Marty, but we didn't talk about it in the episode,
I
so no anyone that's listening doesn't know. Yeah.
I suspect that a lot of these Book of Mormon stories were written in a way that they could be played out in the temple, possibly in the outer courtyard with like families and a variety of other people.
Can
And
I add some context real quick?
yeah,
So
go for it.
things that we do know that happened at the Hebrew temple, there were a lot of feasts that happened in and around the temple. On top of that, there were very specific scenes in those feasts that occurred. So, for example, there were times when they represented Jehovah killing, uh, destroying the old gods. There were times when the king and the queen in the area were crowned, and there were times when feasts of the tabernacle, feasts of the sorry, I'm thinking in like multiple language right now, so I'm having trouble. Feasts of covering. What is it in English? Uh, Atonement, stuff like that. And in all these feasts, there's probably multiple ways to tell the story. And on top of that, when people went through the temple for themselves, because we believe, Adams and I believe, that the temple was not something limited to the king and the queen. Um, so we think that other people had the opportunity to go through the temple themselves as well, and so the whole point is that there were multiple stories told at the temple. The ones we know about were very clear, are the feasts, but there are other stories that are told as people go through an ascension of the temple. But go for it.
Yeah, so like I could imagine that at these feasts they would play these out to try to teach people about the temple, but also to like teach good morals and values, and get like potentially, I think, children and other people excited about the stories and the lore of their history and such. Um, and so the reason why I'm bringing this up is because having these names are actually really useful as stage names. Uh, by removing complicated names and having names that apply to the attributes of the character in the story, you simplify the story and you clarify who the character is and what their general attitudes will be. It's like calling someone like Hero, hey, that's Mr. Hero there, or Superman, that's Superman over there. You know, by you don't call, you know, if you just say, hey, who's that uh
Yeah.
Mike
Yeah,
guy over there?
Billy over there. You introduce Billy, and his
Billy.
name's
You don't
Billy.
know, you
Yeah.
don't know what his role is.
Yeah.
You don't know what their role are. And that might be fine for certain stories, but for plays where clarity and simplicity are actually really key to get a story across, because people don't have time to analyze the situation. They don't have time to really, like, kind of what you give them at the moment is what they're going to understand at the moment.
Yeah.
So you have to keep it simple. So this fit all this name stuff. The more I learn about it, the more apparent to me that, like, this was really meant to be played out, and it's for a
And
variety of
what's
people.
more, even though we claim that it was written down because we have it in the Book of Mormon, that's how we have it right now. If it was something that was played out and stylized across like hundreds of years, that would make it very understandable why A, these stories were such common knowledge, and B, why they were passed down with such clarity over the years.
Mhm.
So so I
But
completely agree.
the names are just, it makes it, you know, it's like the
Hmm.
little train that could. You remember this story because the name applies to the situation.
Yeah, you don't need to
You
remember the
don't
whole story. Like someone says, like, tell me about like the is it called the Little Train? Anyway, but so you could mention it. And someone,
yeah, I don't know, something like
yeah, it's not
that.
Thomas the Train Engine, but no,
It's not that one,
yeah,
yeah.
but like you could like mention it, and someone would be like, well, something about a train that like he was just a little guy, but he tried really hard, and eventually he made it up to the top of the mountain. And that's just me. Like I have. When's the last time I talked about this story? I'm sure I read it like 15, 20 years ago. So do I have all the
Exactly.
details right? Probably not, but I have enough that like I could convey it very quickly. Let's go on to some other ones that we've talked about a little, and that add a little complexity to the scenario. So once again, starting off right at the beginning of the Book of Mormon, because right away you're connected with like a lot of complications. So you have Nephi and Lehi, and then you have uh, other brothers, Laman, Lemuel, Sam, Jacob. A lot of those names, like we actually know because they're very Hebrew names. But Nephi is not a name that we commonly run into. So maybe we need to understand the Hebrew names a little better. I think Lemuel is the one that's mentioned. Is it Laman or Lemuel that's mentioned more often? There's someone in the Bible who actually has the name. I
Lemuel, I
saying
thought,
Lemuel.
was it the
I
Valley of
assume
Lemuel?
no, I mean in the Bible itself though. I think like the name Lemuel is that the name of like Moses's father-in-law? Anyway, there's like a guy named Lemuel running around. Um, and then of course there's Jacob, and yeah. So Nephi, what does the name Nephi mean? And this is incredibly important because not only is he the first character in the Book of Mormon, but all the people after him, at least according to Mormon, who is doing the compiling, are either named Nephites or Lamanites. He's giving them a name. And I would actually like to compare that name. There's a right now. I don't know how much you're aware of this, Adams, but there's like a huge argument going on online because there's uh, social media has like I'm trying to figure out how to say this correctly. I'm not going to say it correctly. I'm just going to say it. Social media has gotten to the place where like um, there's enough neighborhoods, and sometimes these neighborhoods interact, and so like someone crosses into like LDS neighborhood, and they're like, oh, look at these guys, who are these? And they're like, oh, they're Mormons. And then all the other neighborhoods jump in and they say, well, Mormons aren't Christian. I can tell you that's the one thing we
Hmm.
know. And so then like I really actually get frustrated by this because um, then people go around saying like, well, of course Mormons are Christians because it's actually the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And then the other people, start arguing about the definition of Christian from their definition and blah, blah, blah. And I'm going way too deep. But the whole point is that I think that being called a Nephite was very similar to being called a Christian now. I think there's a lot of similarity with it. So, especially because Christ, which we're going to talk about Christ's name at some point. Christ wasn't around for, like, they say they knew his name. Lehi and Nephi say they knew Christ's name, but since he wasn't around for the majority of the Nephites' existence, so the fact that they're called Nephites means something. So what did the name Nephi mean? It's an Egyptian word, and it means good, fair, white. I think it means a few other things. I'm pretty sure I sent you like something talking about his name, right? Let's see if I can find it, because I pulled up like possible like
possible meanings, yeah,
and also like possible ways of like how you would write it in some sort of reformed Egyptian and stuff. And so that's all speculative. The fact that Nephi or Nephi or all like that has like Egyptian roots, I would say we're past the speculation there. Like NFR, Egyptian means good, beautiful, or excellent. So what does it mean when Nephi says, well, first of all, there's the very first, just in Nephi, like I'm going to share the screen again. Nephi 1:1, he says, I, Nephi, I the good, having been born of goodly parents, blah, blah, blah. And then he goes on and he says, having a great knowledge of the goodness and the mysteries of God. Like, he just said his own name 3 times there on purpose. And so for me, that's one of the clues, is if you see the pun right away or the meaning of the name, then you know that they're saying, I wouldn't say they're just introducing a character, but they're at least saying, here's the name. I really need you to pay attention to its meanings, and I'm going to emphasize its meanings right now so that you understand what's going on there.
So
yeah.
So for like, if you can see this as like a stage name as well as so if you look in like the Old Testament, Moses means to draw out, and he drew the Israelites out of Egypt. So like his name as a stage name teaches the Israelites like what his role was. Nephi is in a similar course of action, is very clearly showing whoever's being taught or told about this story about what his role is.
Yeah, I love it. And of course, what are the things that he and Lehi talk about immediately is they talk about the tree of life, and how do they describe the fruit of the tree in life, of the tree of life. Sorry, I was trying to look for it. How do they describe it, Adams?
They call it pure white, most desirable above all other things.
Yeah.
Or,
and so
I didn't paraphrase it quite correctly, but
that's close enough for me, because if they're not saying the words good and white, they're at least saying something so adjacent that it's clearly connected. So that's
and the whole if you look at this, the whole Book of Mormon as like a narrative, you have like the Nephites and the Lamanites, and they say that there's a lot more complexity amongst those groups than what's being presented. Mormon claims that like pretty much from the get-go when he starts to write. But the whole point of what he's doing, at least what Mormon's doing, is like there's a group called the Nephites who are the good people, and then
Mm-hmm.
the Lamanites who are like the people that are kind of against. And that story is kind of started in the book of Nephi, and that's probably when they decided to use that name to differentiate the two complicated groups of people.
Yeah. Yep. Um, yep. I want to dive into that more, but I want to actually also make a clarification because in First Nephi 11, verse 13, I guess I'll pull it up. Uh, it says, "This is Nephi having his vision." It says, "And it came to pass that I looked and beheld the great city of Jerusalem, and also other cities, and I beheld the city of Nazareth, and in the city of Nazareth I beheld a virgin, and she was exceedingly fair and white." So right there, Nephi also explains that fair and white is also like that's connected very tightly with the word Nephi. So Dave Butler's theory is that Nephi is named after the Virgin, or at least it's supposed to reference the Virgin. So and we can go into that more. So now to from that sidebar, let's go back to what you were saying. You're saying look at the overarching story. You have the Nephites and you have the Lamanites. You have the people that are supposed to be. This is notwithstanding how they actually act. They are supposed to be the representations of goodness, fairness, virtue, loveliness, all of that. They're supposed to be that representation. And then when they break the commandments, that is when they're cast out and they become uh, I don't know, layman. They become Lamanites. So whatever layman,
They effectively become Lamanites.
yeah,
There are actually many stories in the Book of Mormon where Nephites go and join the Lamanites, and how are they described by the authors? Well, they're Lamanites, like, and this isn't to make light of the complicated Book of Mormon structures. The whole point of this is to simplify these complex stories in order to teach important, valuable lessons about Christ. You don't want to get people hung up on like a very specific detail that has nothing to do with how do we become better people. The Book of Mormon does a really good job at describing what it considers to be the pride cycle, which I think we call it the pride cycle, where pretty much the Nephites, the people who are supposed to be the people of God, will be righteous, follow God's commandments, then become wealthy, then become prideful, and then effectively fall to their enemies because now they're too prideful to follow God's commandments and be protected by being faithful, obedient people. And then eventually they'll repent and then go and be good people again, and then they become rich, and the cycle just repeats itself. And because Mormon didn't get caught up on the very nitty gritty specifics of the details, he was able to teach some of these very simple but powerful lessons in a clear manner that anyone that reads the Book of Mormon, regardless of whether or not you know Hebrew, you can come away with that lesson.
absolutely love it. Um, and the sad part I think is that because we don't see it like that, we have to break it into stories that like we only understand partially. And if you talk about like Hebrew culture, Jewish culture, they talk about I'm gonna butcher this, but they have like four different ways of like reading the scriptures. And the first one is like the very narrative driven way, the very scripture or story driven way, and then you go into like the actual like deeper analysis of it. And there's more, but we barely understand quite often like the storybook driven way because we don't get like the jokes with the names. It's like a kid watching Phineas and Ferb and like the dad's laughing and the kid's like that was funny because robot go boom, and the dad's like there's a lot more jokes there or whatever's going on. I'd like to bring up another name that we've mentioned quite a bit, but maybe we could go into a little bit more depth here. So we have the names Adam and Eve. So Adam means earth, and it also means man. So Adamah is like dirt, and but it also means like humanity or man. Eve means life, and the example that I always use for it is like if you've watched the Fiddler on the roof, when you hear the fiddler and he goes l'chaim, to life. I don't know if you remember that part, Adams, but l'chaim.
Oh, I remember.
That,
I listened to that soundtrack every half year.
oh, dude, I need to
I'll
watch that
listen to
movie
it.
again. But l'chaim is Eve. That means that's the word Eve. So he's literally saying the life version of the name Eve. And what's interesting is we know that Adam had a different name in the pre-earth life, and Eve, I'm sure, did as well. What we do know is that Adam, man, was called Adam pretty quickly. On the other hand, woman, like she was woman for a little while, and then Adam was told to give her a name. And he said, I will call her Eve because she is the mother of all living. And when he did that, that's when God was like, I think you're getting this naming thing. And I think that should be a clue to all of us that names are as much descriptive and portentful. I'm not saying it correctly, but a description of how you should be living your life and how you can be a lesson to others as much as being an identifier. And maybe that's why when we read the scriptures and we see so many names, we get like absolutely befuddled by them, because there's like, for example, Elijah in the Bible and Elisha and Elias in the New Testament, and you're like, who are they referring to? There's multiple, is there Elijah and Elias? And we need to remember that there are people that are being referenced, and then there are also the things that the person represented that are being referenced. So if we say, for example, everyone on earth died and Adams and his wife had to go start life on a new island, they are Adam and Eve. And we might not even have to say more than that. People would understand that he is now the first man on earth. That is how you are. You are the progenitor of the future human race. It says so much without saying it. The same is true for everything else. Because I'm talking about Adam and Eve, of course, I'm going to also bring up one of my favorite scriptures, which is Lehi talking to his kids. Do you remember which chapter this is? Is it chapter 28? I need to... that would be way off. That's not right. But it's Lehi talking to his kids, and he tells them that they need to stand and be men. Do you remember where we are with that? I don't have my physical copies with me. I could do a quick search, I guess. Kids. Rise from the dust, be men. Let's see if I can find it. Is it 2 Nephi 1:21? Let's do that one. So I'm gonna read this one. 2 Nephi 1:21. And now that my soul might have joy in you. And first of all, joy is a very important word that we need to pay attention to. And now that my soul might have joy in you, and that my heart might leave this world with gladness because of you, that I might not be brought down with grief and sorrow to the grave. Arise from the dust, my sons, and be men, and be determined in one mind and in one heart, united in all things, that ye may not come down into captivity. So that clearly has like a million temple references. But the one that I think is hilarious is just that line where it says, arise from the dust, my sons, and be men. Because what is he saying? He's saying, get up from the dirt, get up from the Adamah, and my sons, and B, Adam. So he's saying that like twice, just one right after another. And I know that there's different ways to say dust, but I'm pretty sure that if he didn't use the word Adamah, then he, even if he used a different word, people would know that he's saying Adam in both. He's referencing that, there, this is the word for dirt. This is what I'm referencing. So he's saying, arise from the Adamah, my sons, and be Adam. So without jumping too much into the temple stuff, Adams, do you have any additions that you would like to add to that one? Any thoughts?
Oh, I just think it's hilarious because the Book of Mormon loves that imagery. By the way, it loves like, okay, arising from the dust, or I'm going down to, returning to the dust. There's a lot of, they love the Adam imagery in the Book of Mormon, and it's
So not to
I
jump too
like how
much
you,
into
yeah.
the direct temple imagery, let's go to the story of Adam and Eve, and what is that saying through the story of Adam and Eve? My opinion is that just using that story alone, like I said, there's like 5 different layers that we could read it on. The Hebrews, always read it on 4 at least, but like let's just go one. He's telling each of his sons that just like Adam, who was put to sleep and then told to, then arise, get up from the dust, uh, Adam was a child in the Garden of Eden. And then
So
go for it. Sorry.
just to be a little nitpicky here, in the second Genesis 2, the earth was made, but the living soul, at least what they say is that the Lord formed man of the dust. This is verse 7 of chapter 2 of Genesis. The Lord God formed man of the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul. So the idea of becoming a man, there's you could receive life and become a living soul, which is more akin to God than the dust.
Yeah, I love that. That's one way to take it that I absolutely love. You're saying just from that verse from Genesis 2:7 that you could be something that does not act upon. You could be dust, which is acted upon. That's all it is. And then God breathed life into that dust and made a man, being Adam. And so that's the second option. You could be the dirt, or you could be that dirt that was made man with the capability of choices and mistakes and everything, but at the very least, working on that path back to God. And those are your 2 options. Yeah, you could just be like a wavering ship, or you could be someone who acts.
And just for people who don't understand why man is made from the dust, they knew that when people died, their bodies would decay and effectively go back to the earth. I know we don't think about that very often in these modern times, but I think that was a very well understood concept for most of humanity, that bodies don't last forever. So if they turn into dust, that means they were dust at some point. They were dirt at some point. However, they recognize, and I think we should all recognize, that human life is not defined by the fact that we are dust. It's because we're something more than the basic composition. Like a car, you don't say a car is just some metal bits and pieces. No, there's a design, thought processes that went into making the car different than just the stuff it's made of.
And this gets
There's an
really deep.
organization to it.
This gets really deep into like the difference between like Hebrew and Greek thought, like more Oriental and Western thought. So so just to touch on it without going too deep, at least our understanding is that Hebrew thought was much more that a thing is what it is because of what it does. A car is a car because it transports you from point A to B much faster than by foot, much faster than you can walk, but not quite as fast as flying, and it does so on roads. That's like kind of what a car is. The Western thought might say, well, a car is composed of tires and gas and an internal combustion engine and a bunch of things. But unless you put all those things together correctly, kind of like you're saying with the design, it doesn't really matter what those components are because it's not doing anything. All those things existed for thousands and thousands of years, but because they weren't put together in the form of a car and the roads weren't there and the infrastructure wasn't there, cars didn't exist until the late 1800s. And so there's the very Western idea and the very Hebrew idea, or at least Oriental idea. And so that's a big part of what you're saying. Like the man is the action. The man is the breathing soul with the capacity to become God.
Yeah, and that's just important to understand the story. I think in general it's important to understand for life. Uh, that way we don't get distracted by things that are not important, that don't have function. Like when you're raising a family, and because I think that's the focus of the church, and the gospel is raising family. Like the most important things aren't, oh, I dressed up my baby in a really cute outfit, or oh, like I got her diaper changed today. Like there's like the little things that make up the experience of raising a child, but having the child grow up healthy and becoming more, and learn and become more like God, and develop righteous attributes, those are what make the child. It's not, the clothes I put on around the day, or some of these other insignificant things. And so the reason why I'm saying that is just that when we're reading these stories, they intentionally put lessons in here that can help us become better people. And if we understand what they're getting at, then we can root out some of the mystery of the Bible and really start to understand what the writers believed would make us more godly.
I love it. I love it. And I think, anyway, I don't need to go into that. I absolutely love it. That's fantastic. Um, we've already gone for a long time, so I'm going to jump into one more that kind of like mirrors what we were just talking about. So, in the Book of Mormon, very soon after, there's what are the scriptures, the chapters you got? Well, the headings you got: First Nephi, Second Nephi, Jacob, Enos, Jerem, Omni. Is that correct? Okay. So after Jacob, immediately comes Enos. What is the name Enos, and what does it mean? The name Enos, Enosh, and I'm probably saying it wrong. I say everything with a Spanish accent, but it means mortal man or frail man, humankind in weakness. So, Adams, can you guide us through, like very rapidly, uh, how that would play out? Like, especially if this was like a stage play, like why that name is so important? Hold on, before you talk, make sure you yeah.
Oh, sorry. Do you want me to focus on the story of Enos and how his name applies to his story, or towards? Yeah, yeah, that's what I'll do then. So Enos, uh, him being having the characteristics of a mortal man, he pretty much he's one of us, or we're him. We're him in this story. He goes to the forest, and he actually is going through a very interesting temple ceremony in the forest, which is strange. Most people talk about him going to pray and for the repentance. He actually has encounters with, effectively, with God. Through, he's granted repentance, but that's part of the temple process, is that you go there, you show your obedience, you make covenants, you go to a different room. There's veils that are lifted. There's a judgment that happens, and then you get to see and encounter God. And Enos does all of those things. So as he's a mortal man in his story, I don't know if I want to go super deep into it, because like every verse in the book of Enos, I think that might take up too much time.
No,
So
I mostly
there's
just want
something
you
wanted
to
talk
say, like, imagine this was a stage play, kind of like we were talking about. Like,
Yeah.
how does that roll? Yeah.
Well, it helps you understand, like, that it can be anyone that's going through this temple experience. It's not because you're Enos, son of who is he? Who's his father? Benjamin. Enos. Who? Jacob was his father. I don't know why I said Benjamin. Or was it? Who was his father? Knowing my father, he was a just man. Yeah, it had to be Jacob, right? Okay, so like Enos, Enos is just a man. Like it doesn't. You don't have to be, Nephi, the king. You don't have to be Superman David Kramer to go through this temple experience, to be to receive repentance, to be judged and redeemed, to be made promises to, and eventually to meet God. Like, it applies to us because this is our story. Enos is our story, and if you can understand that, then the from like a play point of view, like this, his name does a really good job, because then anyone watching this play can understand that all the scenes that they're going through, we can place ourselves in that scene.
It's the same. It's the same as Adam, right? Except
Yeah, it's the same as Adam.
Adam
Yeah,
might be a little too high and mighty. This is saying, look at a man, any man, a
look at a
fallen
man.
man.
Yeah,
This fallen man can still have these same experiences and should have these same experiences. And so it's, I absolutely love how you said that. It flips it around immediately. Like, it's almost two different versions of the temple story, just right back to back. You have Adam and Eve, and then you have Enos, and you say, look at them, like this ranges across the whole spectrum. So and I think that that's something that we actually need to pay attention more. I know that this is a little niche in its application, but I think that a lot of members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints feel like going to the temple is important, but they don't always feel worthy enough, or they don't always feel like, we understand that it's God's house, but what you need to remember is that it's a path back to God, and that just because one day you were walking on the path, and you visited God's house, doesn't mean that you never have to walk that path again. You must continually be walking on that path. And even if some days you are Enos, you must walk on that path. Even if some days you're Adam, you must walk on that path. So I say we stop there, because we've been going for a while already. The problem is that there's just so much, and I want to continually, bring these observations of what the names could mean, like their Hebrew or their Egyptian meanings. I'd like to bring them to light, but the bigger thing is, just remember these names mean things in a way that is super important. I didn't even dive into all the ways they can mean things. For example, my name is David, so when I see David in the Bible, I relate with that more than when I see, for example, Jacob. I have a brother named Jake. We have a brother named Jacob, and I'm like, Jacob's cool, but David's the one that like really resonates with me. And I think that there's something to that when you see these names in the scriptures, there's going to be certain ones that resonate with you more, and you need to take their stories and take them to heart. And sometime we'll talk about, actually, I'm going to bring this one. I don't know if you've heard this one, Adams. The name David, for example, might be a title just like Nephi. Have you heard that one?
I have not heard that,
So
but it kind of makes
so
sense.
let's just super quick. There's two stories of guys that were kind of young that killed a giant from the Philistines in the Bible. Just like there's two versions of the Noah's Ark story, and there's like two versions of Genesis, just like slammed right after another. There's like, and I think the other guy who does it is named Elhanan or something like that, which is a very Hebrew name because it means like it has a into conjecture. What do the names mean, and what can their stories teach us? That's what we're really going for. We're not really going for let's hie our way to Collab and figure out where Collab is. It's let's understand what the names could teach us, and so that we can improve our lives and work on our way back to God. So anyway, I'll leave that there. Adams, once again, thank you so much. We'll have to do this again. I know Marty wants to jump on, and you have some other buddies that you want to get on because I'd love to talk more about this. Not just because I think talking about it's good for me, but also because I think that it would be good to talk about it at different levels with different people who have different understandings of it, and therefore we can kind of dive into it in ways that open up our eyes on different levels instead of just me and you being like, man, don't we love this exact level right here that we talk about. I don't know if I'm explaining that well, but so anyway, thanks a bunch. And anyone that watches or listens, if you get anything out of it, I hope you do. And I hope that you have a fantastic